Alice encountered a pigeon that mistook her for a snake and was terrified. The pigeon asked Alice what she was, and Alice, feeling confused after all the transformations of the day, insisted that she was a little girl. However, the pigeon didn't believe her and remarked that as long as she was looking for eggs, it didn't matter whether she was a snake or a girl to him. They parted ways. Alice decided to eat the 2 pieces of mushroom from her hands, which ultimately restored her to her normal size. She continued walking through the forest and came across a small house. Alice stood in front of the small house for a minute or two, contemplating her next move. Suddenly, a servant in livery dashed out from the forest. If you only looked at his face, he would resemble a fish, as he used his feet to vigorously kick the door. Another servant, also in livery, with a round face and big frog-like eyes, opened the door. Alice noticed that both servants were wearing wigs adorned with twigs, and she was very curious about what was going on. So she poked her head out from the forest to listen. One of the servants took out a large letter from under his arm, a letter nearly as big as his body, and handed it to the other. He spoke in a solemn tone, "The Duchess, the Queen invites her to play croquet." The frog-like servant merely rearranged the words a bit and repeated in the same solemn tone, "The Queen's invitation, please the Duchess to play croquet." Then they both curtsied deeply, causing their wigs to become entangled. This sight amused Alice, and she had to run far into the forest to keep from being heard. When she peeked out again, the servants had left. The other servant was now sitting on the ground at the door, staring blankly into the sky. Alice timidly approached the door and knocked. However, knocking was pointless, and the servant said, "There are 2 reasons for that. Firstly, because, like you, I am on the outside of the door, and secondly, they are making so much noise inside that they won't hear the knocking." Indeed, there was a peculiar commotion coming from inside, with constant screaming, sneezing, and the occasional sound of things breaking, as if plates or glassware were being smashed. "Oh, the soup has far too much pepper in it," Alice said to herself with difficulty, as she kept sneezing. The pepper in the air was indeed overwhelming, and even the Duchess sneezed frequently. As for the baby, it either sneezed or howled non-stop, never a moment of silence. The only 2 creatures in the kitchen who didn't sneeze were the female cook and a large cat. The cat lay next to the stove, grinning widely. "Please tell me," Alice asked hesitantly because she wasn't quite sure if it was appropriate for her to start the conversation, "why is your cat grinning?" "He's a Cheshire cat," the Duchess said. "That's why he's grinning, pig," the Duchess said harshly, ending with the last word, which startled Alice. However, she soon realized that the Duchess was talking to the baby, not to her. She mustered up the courage to continue, "I didn't know cats could grin. In fact, I've never seen a cat grin before." "They all can," the Duchess replied, "at least, most of them can." "I've never seen one grin," Alice said politely. Feeling relieved to have started a conversation. "You don't know much," the Duchess said, "that's a fact." Alice didn't like the tone of the conversation and wanted to change the subject. While she was thinking about a new topic, the cook removed the soup pot from the stove, then immediately grabbed everything she could find and threw them at the Duchess and the baby. The first to fly was the poker, followed by the frying pan, and then bowls and plates. as if there were a storm of objects raining down. The Duchess didn't pay any attention to it, not even flinching when they hit her. The baby, on the other hand, was crying hysterically, and it was unclear whether the objects had hit it or not. What on earth was happening?